We've seen how geography divides Europe, isolates Africa, and turns the Middle East into a battlefield. But in this third part of Prisoners of Geography, we look at 3 more regions where geography still shapes every decision: South Asia, East Asia, and Latin America. From the Himalayan wall that divides nuclear powers, to island chains that stir superpower rivalries, to jungles and mountains that fragment nations, geography never sleeps. South Asia is home to over a quarter of the world's population, including 2 nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, whose history is marked by tension, war, and territorial disputes. To understand why this region remains on edge, you have to look beyond politics and focus on the land itself. The geography of South Asia is defined by the Himalayas, the tallest mountain range in the world, which acts like a giant wall separating India from China. These peaks are virtually impassable, creating natural isolation and limiting military movement. But to the west and east of these mountains, geography is less forgiving. In the west lies the Punjab region, a flat and fertile plain that stretches between India and Pakistan. This area has been the site of multiple wars since 1947 because it allows for rapid troop movement. It's why armored divisions, missiles, and troops remain on high alert near this border. At the center of these tensions is Kashmir, a mountainous region claimed by both India and Pakistan. Its rugged terrain is both a natural barrier and a military nightmare. Control of mountain passes and high-altitude routes is key, but the terrain makes it almost impossible to fully secure. The Kashmir conflict is not just political, it's geographic. Mountain ranges divide populations, but rivers connect them. These conflicting natural features mirror the conflicting identities of the region: Muslim-majority Kashmir ruled by Hindu-majority India. The geography of South Asia doesn't allow for neat borders. It creates overlap, confusion, and tension. And nowhere is that more visible than in the narrow valleys and remote mountain outposts of the Himalayas. To the east, India faces another geographic problem. The country's northeastern states are connected to the mainland by a narrow strip of land called the Siliguri Corridor, also known as the Chicken's Neck. Surrounded by Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and China, this 22-kilometer stretch is vulnerable to disruption. The mountainous terrain in India's northeast has helped fuel separatist movements and insurgencies. Dense forests, difficult logistics, and ethnic diversity make it hard for New Delhi to assert consistent control. Meanwhile, to the north and east, India shares a long and heavily militarized border with China. In recent years, deadly skirmishes have erupted in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh, both high-altitude regions with undefined boundaries and limited infrastructure. In South Asia, geography builds walls, channels tension, and ensures that friction never disappears for long. The Himalayas were once seen as India's shield, but today they are more like pressure points. Both India and China have built roads, airstrips, and military outposts in these areas, turning isolation into confrontation. Geography also limits economic development. Mountainous regions in Nepal, Bhutan, and northern India remain underdeveloped due to lack of access. Roads are treacherous, railways are scarce, infrastructure is fragile. The Himalayas are also the source of many of South Asia's rivers, but glacial melt from climate change threatens water security across the region, adding another layer of future conflict. The Indus Waters Treaty, signed between India and Pakistan in 1960, governs the use of rivers that flow from Kashmir into Pakistan. But with growing populations and rising tensions, water itself has become a geopolitical weapon. In South Asia, geography is more than mountains and rivers. It's a battlefield, a border, and a bargaining chip, all at once. But South Asia isn't the only region where tension rises with the terrain. In East Asia, geography doesn't just divide nations, it surrounds and squeezes them. Let's see how island chains and coastal choke points shape strategy in the world's most competitive region. East Asia is one of the most strategically intense regions on Earth. It's where ancient civilizations and modern superpowers collide in a sea of tension, fueled not only by politics and history, but by geography itself. The geography of East Asia is defined by coastlines, island chains, narrow seas, and economic dependence on maritime routes. Unlike continental powers like Russia or the United States, China's eastern frontier is wide open and crowded. China's economic heart, cities like Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, lies along its eastern seaboard. But just beyond that coast lies what's known as the First Island Chain. a string of islands including Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, most aligned with the United States. For China, this island chain is both a threat and a trap. It prevents the free movement of its navy and threatens its supply lines. This geography creates a sense of encirclement and pushes China to expand its maritime power. The Taiwan Strait is just 110 miles wide. Taiwan controls access to key shipping lanes, acts as a democratic counterweight to Beijing, and is backed militarily by the United States. For China, reunifying with Taiwan is not just political, it's strategic. China's century of humiliation, a period of colonial exploitation and naval weakness, still haunts its geopolitical mindset. Rebuilding sea power is central to Beijing's long-term strategy. This explains China's creation of artificial islands in the South China Sea, equipped with runways, radar systems, and missile bases. Geography limits China's naval freedom, so it's literally building new geography. But China isn't the only actor in this crowded neighborhood. Let's look at its neighbors and their own geographic challenges. Japan is a long, mountainous island chain with few natural resources. Its isolation made it resilient but resource-dependent. Geography pushed Japan to expand during the 20th century, and geography now shapes its defensive posture. With North Korea and China nearby, Japan relies on the United States alliance for protection, but is also quietly rearming. It's building submarines, investing in missile defense, and rethinking its post-World War II pacifism, all due to the pressures of proximity. Korea lies between China, Japan, and Russia. It's always been a strategic prize and a battleground. Today, it's split into north and south with a demilitarized zone dividing two opposing regimes. The Korean Peninsula is the ultimate geographic fault line. North Korea's mountains make invasion difficult. Its capital, Pyongyang, is protected by terrain. But its isolation is geographic too, with limited fertile land and poor infrastructure. That's part of why the regime invests so heavily in military deterrence. South Korea, by contrast, is densely urban and economically dynamic but relies on sea lanes and United States protection. Geography puts it in the path of conflict even if it wants peace. East Asia is where geography hems in giants and leaves little room for error. Over 40% of global trade flows through East Asian sea routes. Any disruption in the Taiwan Strait or South China Sea could, trigger global economic shockwaves. This makes the region not just a flashpoint, but honestly the center of global stability. The geography of Latin America is defined by extreme barriers. The Andes Mountains run like a spine down the continent, cutting off countries from each other. The Amazon rainforest, one of the densest and most impenetrable in the world, makes east-west transport nearly impossible. When the Spanish and Portuguese colonized Latin America, they focused on exporting goods across the Atlantic, not integrating the continent. Roads and infrastructure pointed outward, reinforcing dependency on Europe and later the United States. Brazil and Argentina are the two largest economies in South America. Yet they remain poorly connected by road and rail. The terrain between them is a patchwork of rivers, wetlands, and mountains, making infrastructure projects expensive and politically complex. Countries like Colombia and Peru are internally divided by mountains and jungle. This isolation contributes to inequality and allows criminal groups and insurgents to control remote regions. The terrain makes governance difficult. Tim Marshall explains that Latin America's geography naturally discourages unity. Unlike Europe's rivers and plains that encourage trade and cooperation, Latin America's mountains and rainforests create isolation. Because travel is hard, most economic activity happens in coastal cities, like Lima, Buenos Aires, or Sao Paulo. Vast interior regions remain underdeveloped. This reinforces urban-rural inequality and limits national cohesion. Even today, building new rail lines or highways across South America is incredibly difficult. Projects like the Bioceanic Corridor, which would connect the Atlantic and Pacific through Brazil, Paraguay, and Chile, face delays due to topography and politics. One notable exception to Latin America's isolation is the Panama Canal, a man-made shortcut that revolutionized global trade. But even this connects global routes more than it connects Latin America itself. Organizations like Mercosur aim to integrate trade between Latin American countries, but geography and political instability slow progress. Nations still trade more with China or the United States than with each other. Latin America is also vulnerable to earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and hurricanes. Countries like Chile and Mexico lie on major tectonic faults. This adds a layer of unpredictability to infrastructure and urban planning. The Amazon is a global ecological treasure, but a logistical nightmare. Developing the interior means clearing jungle, which leads to deforestation and international criticism. Geography here creates a moral and strategic dilemma. In Latin America, nature builds walls, not bridges. The region was never designed to connect easily, and the map reflects that. Still, hope remains. Advances in digital infrastructure, regional alliances, and investment in sustainable transportation could one day overcome these barriers. But geography means that Latin America's future will require patience and creative solutions. Latin America doesn't lack talent, ambition, or resources. What it lacks, and always has, is connection. And geography has been the silent architect of that reality. From mountains that divide to rivers that isolate, Latin America's geography explains more than economics. It explains the limits of integration. But next we turn to a very different region, the Arctic, a place where melting ice is reshaping the map and creating a brand new frontier of power. South Asia is boxed in by mountains. East Asia is a powder keg of islands and straits. Latin America is separated by jungle and stone. Geography doesn't just create borders, it creates destinies. In the next episode, we explore the final chapter of Prisoners of Geography: The Arctic, and what happens when melting ice opens a new map for power. Which part of today's video surprised you most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter.